So Konstantin, you are leading the Tech Leap organization, which role is to boost tech innovation and entrepreneurship. You have over 2 decades of experience in the field of innovation, and you have witnessed massive disruption. As I mentioned earlier, we've all witnessed it, but you witnessed it from a different perspective. And I'd be happy to share that with you through this exchange. And Ernst, you are a 15 years veteran in the corporate world. You have 10 years of entrepreneurship. You are also an investor in startups and scale-ups. And you were previously the managing director of Startup Bootcamp. And you advised several governments on innovation. So I'll start with you. Perhaps you can tell us what is to you the most, I would say, first question would be, what is to you the most important innovation we've seen in the past 15, 20 years? If you had to name one. On top of your head. Microphone.
Probably social media.
You and I talked about bullying before, and you were saying it always been
Well,
there.
no, well, I think you made the point that innovation is not doing new things, but it's rediscovering the same thing. And my point was that I think that could be true because, like, Facebook does something new, but it serves a very old need of people to connect and share things, and it led to bullying. We didn't expect that, but bullying is a very old thing that people do to each other, so it just basically facilitated that. In that sense, it doesn't bring anything new. Where I think we differed of opinion is that some of those the innovations that we're seeing now could, if you extrapolate them, potentially wipe out humanity. So it cannot be just reinventing the same things that are always there. We might actually be able to do very new things that have not been done before. In that sense, they are new, and we don't always know how that's going to pan out and how these different technologies, when they start interacting with each other, we take genomics, artificial intelligence, with quantum computing, for instance, how that is going to change the way we live, work, interact with our environments, with each other. And so I do think that some of the innovations are really doing new things and not just rediscovering the things that are already there.
How about you? If you had to choose one innovation past 15 years?
Quite philosophical in a way, but I would say sort of what we see happening today is definitely a lot of applications around artificial intelligence that really make our life so much different, and you know and you feel it on a daily basis when you interact on internet, but also when you interact in different type of business processes. It does, you know, and what Konstantin is alluding to as well, you know, quantum technology, we don't know yet what is going to happen when it interacts with some of these other technologies. It definitely will make a big difference. I have 1 or 2 slides that I can run on this one, if that's okay with the organization. Yeah. Can we run the slide?
Technology.
So innovate to elevate. We had a few elaborations on this. What does this mean to anyone? And this is sort of there's a funny quote on your left-hand side by Roald Dahl, Matilda. She was probably one of the first disruptors in your childhood, right? She was a person with her youth and age, probably the Greta Thunberg we would call her today, but that's Matilda. Somewhere inside of us, we have the power to change the world. So why I'm optimistic about this? Those 6 driving forces that Konstantin was already mentioning, and I hope that this one works.
Yeah.
To sum it up all, you know, open the news today and you see all of this. The digital revolution, anything digital, everything becomes digital, whether it's IoT, AI, quantum technology. Daily basis, we read about climate revolution. What is happening there? How is it going to impact us? We don't know yet, but it's going to change, and it's going to change massively, in a far more accelerated pace than we hope for. Energy revolution, what is going to happen? How are we going to make that happen in a sustainable manner? And that was very clear from that part. And urbanization, putting all these people together in one single source or one single place. 1 billion people have moved over the past years to urban areas. And the cultural change. Talking about an experiment. You see the baby in the middle there. How will he grow up? Will this be a total moron or a genius? We don't know. It's a big experiment that we're currently running as humanity. In the final part, we noticed it every day on the bullying, on the social media, what the social backlash is on this all. Everybody's posting now stuff on social media, and you don't want to be sort of, oh, I'm here. No, you want to make something special out of it, you know? You want to extrapolate all the stuff that you do. So change now, but it's also the change, the frequency. You all feel this. Change is going to happen more often. The oscillation, the extremes are higher. The equilibrium is no longer there. You don't have a rest anymore in this one. And the wickedness, you get stuff that you never heard about. Just the muting of the diseases that we see in China. You could never predict these type of things. So it also creates a bit of stress. And this is why, with that backdrop, you see this acceleration. And I'm very positive about how you can address that with innovation. When I worked in Startup Bootcamp, I saw probably 500 startups in a very short period of time. How do entrepreneurs do this? How do startups do that? They do stuff every day, little incremental changes. Although Tom is saying you need to get a further advanced type of thing. Start with little things. Don't make it too big. Because NGOs, governments, institutions, they will probably not give you the solution today. The innovators, the entrepreneurs, the investors, they are the ones helping you to change that. So from my philosophy, when I work with all these type of startups, the power of innovation methods, thinking about it, you need a lot of innovation. Alex Osterwalder, probably familiar to many of you, he says probably only 3 or 4 out of 100 ideas, out of 100 ventures, will make an impact. And you have to find traction. And traction is also what Tom was referring to. You have to find clients who are really willing to buy this. You have to find investors who are really willing to invest. And it's also what Constantine is doing in entertaining this total ecosystem in order to drive traction with those entrepreneurs. That drives that philosophy forward. And this is why I'm very positive about innovation, about these type of events like Change Now. So, not Greta Thunberg, but Matilda. So let's keep her a little bit as a hero in this one. So that's my answer to your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Constantine, so you know, Change Now has been in existence for 3 years now. I mean, it's its 3rd edition. And the first 2 editions were actually at Station F, which was formerly a train station. So it's repurposed into this incredible incubator, accelerator for startups and scale-ups and innovation. And the Grand Palais, where we are at today, which is an incredible honor to be here, because this was created during the Universal exhibition in France many, many years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, it'll be soon renovated. It's actually one of the last big events that this structure is hosting as we know it today. So Change Now is on point with the theme of renovating versus innovating and rethinking, remaking something new out of something existing. But you and I had a very interesting conversation backstage about how we can actually also innovate starting from scratch with AI and genomes and quantum. You want to tell us a bit more about how you feel those new technologies that we've never experienced before, AI and genome and quantum, are completely new things for us?
Well, they have long roots, and they typically stay under the horizon or under the radar screen for a long time, and then they suddenly appear, and then they have this already on this exponential curve, and they've been out there for a long time. You said in 2005 all of these stuff didn't exist, and we're living in this incredibly innovative times, and we're experiencing this incredible change. Well, if you would have been in 2005 and you looked back 15 years, you would have said the same thing. The internet wasn't there in 1990, and not knowingly, but it was developed in the 70s, right? So people that knew it was there maybe were not surprised. But now suddenly mobile telephony was developed much before, but it also came forth in the 90s. So suddenly it's mobile telephony, it's internet companies, the .com, it's the end of the Iron Curtain, it's all of that stuff happening. So if you would have been in 2005, you thought you'd be living really, really exciting times, and now we're seeing this period where we are probably also much more aware of all of these technologies. I was working at the European Commission, was leading the digital agenda, and we were trying to tell companies and we're trying to tell governments that this digital thing was going to be very transformative, and people just didn't want to acknowledge it. It was techie stuff, you know. We were a vertical. You have transportation, you had ICT, and you had energy, and you know, ICT was everything from telco to internet. Mm-hmm. And we said, no, it's horizontal, it's transformative, it's going to be transforming the way we are communicating, the way, you know, we're going to consume our energy, all of this stuff. And we didn't really get the message across. So it shows that it was, at least at the political level, it was still very much under the radar. And now, you know, it emerges, and it doesn't. At the time we were talking about everything goes mobile, and you have the cloud, and so, and the whole GDPR was developed without really acknowledging the new AI developments, and so Europe was very proud, and you know, data protection came out, and then suddenly we find that we've regulated something that, you know, makes it really difficult to compete in Europe. Because we don't have the same access to data that you have in other places, and that might be a good thing or a bad thing, but it's something to acknowledge. And now my point was that there are quite a number of technologies that we know that are actually coming together, especially the digital technologies and biomedical sciences, and we don't really know how that's going to pan out. And we do need our, you know, the policymakers and to think about how to address these and how they're going to impact our societies. And I mentioned this because when we were delivering the digital agenda, we were just pushing digital. We are the envoys or the ambassadors for that specific issue. If you would be transport, you would be pushing for more roads or more railroad connections in Europe. So ours was digital, and we felt more and more uneasy that we were actually pushing a world where we knew we need to do this because we knew the world was going forward. You had the Americans, and you had the platforms, and you had Chinese coming up, and so Europe needed to be competitive in this space. But we had no idea of how that was going to pan out on a societal level. So as policymakers, how do you deal with that? And it's a bit the same with AI now, and then looking forward with some of these other technologies. We know, and it's actually my work, I mean, we know we want to pave the way for entrepreneurs because we know that these entrepreneurs are going to bring those technologies to the market more rapidly, that they're going to create new jobs, and that they are going to make us more competitive. We don't really know or fully understand how that's going to impact our society, right? If in my program I'd have a Facebook today, I'd be super happy. I would think, wow, you know, we got this incredible winning company, we got a unicorn, and, you know, we'll be cheering them on because, you know, they're leaders in tech. Then obviously, you know, 10 years down the line, they might be doing stuff where we all think, well, that's not what we wanted it to do. Mm-hmm. And we don't really have an answer to that. So in maybe taking the metaphor from Tom a bit further, if this would be a patient, you know, I would just be a doctor sticking, you know, and curing little problems, making sure the blood flows, making sure that more capital comes to entrepreneurs when they need it, that they can get the talent they need to grow, that they get access to technology. I don't know what they will be doing with that. Sure. And I don't think we have a kind of a holistic view of where that society should be going because we just don't control all the levers. We could say, like we did with genetically modified organisms in the 90s, we can block that because we think Europe has certain ethical problems with that. Well, the rest of the world is going to have a very different view, and they're going to develop them, and then we become consumers of that. So we're no longer in control over these processes. So it's a very fine balance between investing in these technologies, even if you don't know where they're going, but you have to be in the lead to be able to determine where the road goes. And you have to have policymakers that understand this to set certain boundaries so that it develops the kind of outcomes that we find desirable in society.
When we were backstage, we were talking about the power that comes with the technology, or our abilities today, that we have more power to do more. And I want to stress one point, is that this panel is not about discarding or looking from a negative point of view technology. We embrace technology. I believe that we have to embrace it and appreciate it for its full value, but we also have a duty today. We have a responsibility towards our power towards technology. And how would you, I'll start with you and then you, how would you address, I mean, you talked about GDPR, that's a form of responsibility, or trying at least to put some boundaries and some parameters around a certain power of having someone's data. But how would you, or how do you at TechLeap try to address that responsibility that you have? Because there's an ethical component that's instrumental in innovation today.
Yeah, I think we don't have all the answers, and we shouldn't be arrogant about it, but we should have enough. Our policymakers should be aware and should be trained in technology so that they actually, when certain misbehavior or unethical behavior starts to occur, we actually do know how to handle that. Mm-hmm. And now I remember when we were doing Digital Agenda, we would just basically put the threat of regulation up to change behavior. Because a threat of regulation might lead to self-regulation, might curve behavior. So anything we do in this space has the basic assumption that society and our political system, our governance system, will eventually curb those developments towards a desirable or kind of consensus view in our societies of where this development should be going. Mm-hmm. That obviously, there's an underlying assumption to that, is that the people that make those decisions know what this development is about and know how to regulate it. And that, I think, is a big challenge for all of us. And in an event like this, if all of these good things that are out there, if to bring them forward, we need to have also the structures and the regulation and all of the support structure for that actually to materialize. Otherwise, all of these things are very cute, nice ideas, and as you said, 1 in 100 might actually make it. But it's actually the support structures that make these kind of innovation come to the fore, and then it should happen in a way that's responsible, and therefore we need kind of probably better educated governments, I think.
Good point, better educated governments. How would you answer that question?
Yeah, recently I did a nice meeting in China, in the Nanjing Tech Week, and then obviously GDPR is not on top of their list, right? Sort of, and how you deal with that. At the same time, they develop the technology accordingly with face recognition, identification, or what have you. So there will probably be a few steps ahead of us anyways. In a few weeks I will be in Dubai with the Dubai government, also not top of the list if that's GDPR or not. So we have to be self-aware on that one. The restrictions and impediments that we put ourselves into, they might not be applicable in other places in the world. So technology will move on, regardless what we say as governments or institutions. The second part is the sort of if you see the entrepreneurial drive is so powerful, and when it gets incentivized in the right way, the machinery is probably more effective. This is why you have private equity. This is why you have VCs investing in those new ideas and bringing them to scale. And I hope, obviously, some of that is what we're doing here today at Change Now, and the total event is bringing that a little bit more together. I.e., when I invest in a company, I would like to see traction. I still would like to see that it has a monetization. Even if it's called world peace, if your startup is called world peace, I'm happy to invest if we see that first level of traction, where we do have, a business model that is paving the way for a next step for the growth. So I'm pretty optimistic on this one. Restrictions, the governments can only do so much, to a certain extent, and we need to embrace that innovation. And some people are still a little bit reluctant in a way, what I sense also in this country, So this is there we have this opportunity, and also for the Change Now conference.
Thank you. I'd like to wrap it up by thanking you for all that you do, both with your initiatives and entities. do a lot to help the innovators that are out there. So thank you, and thank you for your contribution to this panel.
Good.
Thank you.